Hello, welcome back to Zero XP Studio. I'm Zero XP Dev, and we're about to get started into our research. As you'll see, we're going to pull up our main screen. As you'll see, we've got our YouTube page up to start with, Zero XP Studio at Zero XP Dev. This is where we're going to archive all the live streams, so if you do miss anything, feel free to catch up on there later on videos. So we're going to start researching what we need to do. What are our first steps? So we're throwing it into Google already, and we're going to throw it into YouTube, maybe have a look at a couple of videos. First thing we see, Google, AI overview. What's my opinion? I believe that AI can be a very useful tool. I don't believe it should be used completely for creation. I plan to use it in the way of gaining ideas, gaining inspiration, etc. I don't want it to create anything for me final product. So anything like this where, yeah, I'm asking a question and answers come up, I'll consider what it says. I am going to scroll down and look it through some official entries, websites, and see what they say. And as I said, we'll check out some videos as well. When it comes to design, I may use AI to generate images for inspiration, but I plan to create everything myself, final design. So, with that said, let's move on. So, developing first games involves several steps, including planning, designing, building, testing, and more. Develop a concept. Well, we've done that already. Create a design document. Write down your game's design, including the rules and mechanics and user interface. We've slightly done that as well. We'll obviously expand on that. Determine your ideas. Identify the skills and software you need. So that's going to probably be our first step. So, 1. Find how to choose a game engine. I'll see if I can increase the size of this screen a little more. But we're mainly going to be working on the first screen, so let's keep us up there for now. Reddit. I love Reddit. Some great entries on Reddit from the community. Need some guidance on first steps. Where should I start making my first game? Tips on first game. Beginner's guide to indie development. They sound like some good starting points to browse through. How to start making a game. From zero to game designer. That nearly sounds like it's designed for us. From Zero XP. Alright, let's browse through a couple of these. So, how do we even start making a game? Reset one of them. Start making ideas. Zero clear how to start. What do I learn? What program do I use? It's forever legit Unity and Unreal. Both have good tutorials and shooters. Documentation is easy to yet the hardest part. Without them, you're blind, stumble in the dark. They're make or break, I guess. If you lack documentation, your project will never survive. Documents will grow, will shrink, will change in all directions. Documents are never static. This guy does not know how to spell. Game design and documentation from simple one-page to game design documentation to 10-page plus. Look at the examples given by Scott Rogers in his book Level Up. Storyboards, even simple stick persons with stick-ons, stock cardstock or corkboard is all you need. Level design documentation, you'll create a list of standards that will work for you in the game. These standards and golden rules aid in level design and structure. Example, look at level design rules John Romero created for Doom. Dive deeper if you wish. That might be something interesting to look at. What did you call it? Level design rules for Doom. So on and so forth. Choose a common game engine with plenty of learning resources, especially resources within the game genres of the game you wish to make. Choose art style, then choose tools you'll need to create said art. Get a bunch of free placeholder stuff and care little to none about how quick dirty prototypes look. Never feel like you must create everything. There are plenty of freelancers that are affordable that do good work. Now that may be something that we'll be looking at potentially for music, things like that, sound design. Look at services like Fiverr, etc. Tutorials, courses, develop.games. The website has a lot of free info on game development made by a streamer called Pirate Software. Now, I have seen him, so we may be checking out his streams sometimes. He's worked in places like Blizzard and his content is very cool and informative too. So let's open that. Let's drag that to our end.
I'm asking people in chat, man.
Oops.
If that's the case,
yeah, I think he's live on stream at the moment. Alright. This guy's got a lot of information, but it looks very disheveled, disorganized the way he's presenting it. Everything's starting with I. Okay. What are we looking at here? Not much info there. Really looking for like guides. Had an invitation of the getting started guide. Let's keep that there. Tips on first game. Tips given. Simple, simple, simple. That's what we're planning for the first one. Keep it simple. Finish your game, don't abandon it. Well, that's part of why we're streaming to Twitch. We're going to keep ourselves accountable, and we're going to go, as I said, from 0 XP right through to production and release. Don't be afraid to make a copy of a game. Not copies, but we're getting definitely inspiration. Get experience from real jobs in programming. Well, I haven't done that. That's what I mean, we're 0 XP. Great ideas can lead to unattainable ideas, turning joy to frustration, then depression. We've already got the depression, so we're already covered on that mark, so we're all good. Rework old projects for experience purposes. When learning a new engine, even experienced developers recreate simple games upon breakout to learn the engine faster. Might be something good idea. We're gonna, as I said, take inspiration from Space Invaders and stuff, so hey, maybe recreate that to start with. Keep a blog of your work, jotting down spent hours and money. Break your game into small pieces, then combine like a puzzle later. Polish your game before letting the feature creep set in. Only show initial prototypes to people who know what it takes to design and code things themselves. Well, everyone on Twitch is going to see the initial prototypes, so hello, we're doing that wrong already. This is always a chance for version 2. Game that's notoriously bad could become stupendously awesome in V2.0. People are awesome, people are dicks. Learn to live with both of them. Feedback Friday. Again, the rule applies. Remember your sibling saving over your save game. What? Remember your sibling saving over your save game in fast-string game name equals favorite game here. And then on, you used all the save file slots. Make iterative copies of your source as you go. Oh, versions, yeah, okay. Could have said that a lot simpler. Start small and simple, and with experience you'll be able to know when starting bigger is the better option. Set your features requirements for the game early on and don't deviate from them unless they become obsolete. Only add on new features requirements when your product is nearly completed or completely polished. We have sequels for a reason. There are no shortcuts to success. In the case of learning programming, learning the engine you are using, shortcuts will only hinder you in the long run. Good games to code first, generally in order. Long Breakout, Tetris, Pac-Man, 2D side-scroller. Yeah, maybe. This actually seems like a fairly good list. We might keep a bookmark on this, so let's add a folder. Research. Whoops, no, that's not what I want. Research done. Good read links. How to succeed at making one game a month. Well, we don't want to do that. This is going to take us a lot longer than a month. Indie game do's and don'ts. Maybe we can check out that later. We've got this saved. Exercise and goal ideas. One game a month. Scroll down to why, because you can. Game jams. I don't think we're going to look at joining any game jams or anything yet. And OP said that this was pretty much a list of everything from that comment, so let's leave that one. Alright. Someone who's been developing games for 15 years since a teenager. So he's got a game released. What does it look like? It's just because it's sped up that may look a bit jaggy, but hey, he's got something released better than what we've got. Okay, first off you need an idea. Keep it as simple as possible. Check. Some people start by replicating a game like Pac-Man or Asteroids. Hey, what did we say? Even simple games take a lot to effort to make, and you'd be surprised how hard it is to make a game look and feel exactly like another. Once you have an idea of what you'll want to make, research online to find an engine that will support that idea. Try different ones out and get a feel for what you like. I personally really enjoy the visual scripting of Unreal Engine's blueprint system. I think that's what we're going to be looking at. So I've got an idea of what visual scripting looks like already. We've got Touch Portal. I know a little bit of basics about programming. We did programming in school. Saying that school was 20 years ago. So this is actually what I've got in front of me. We've got a Samsung Galaxy Tab A, but I've got this tool running Touch Portal. Brilliant. It's my replacement for an Elgato Steam Deck. But we've got some stuff going on in here. So in these tools here, these buttons are visual scripting. If I go into one that I've got an example of something I've done, bear with me a moment. Here we go. So where you get basically some sort of statement that's like an action that says, hey, when something happens, then an event, do this, and you can embed those actions. So for example, if we were to go, this is already on events. What do we want? We're basically looking for things that happen. One of the events that happen. They should be highlighted green. So something like that, but we're going to go, there we go. So yeah, we'll use the same one that we've got there. So if we were to drag one of these, when button state changes, so we've got that and it's empty, so you can select when it changes to on or off. Then we can go, right, set button state to, etc. We could go when it changes to on, set it to off. Now that's going to be a redundant program, redundant bit of code, because, well, as soon as it goes to on, it's going to show it goes to off. So if we delete that, set button state by ID. So this would, for example, you could take the ID of another button and throw it in here, blah, 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 blah. And when this button turns on, it also turns on another button. So basically they're all if-or statements, things like that, or whatever. Hey, if this happens, do that. When this happens, do that. So this one, the button, for example, when it changes to on, it's going to change the icon image to this one. When it changes to off, it's going to restore button visuals for the icon. So it basically changes the button to an on state and an off state and changes the image that appears on the button. So I understand visual programming like that, visual language. So definitely looking out for features like that is going to be a benefit. So where did we see that? Visual scripting. So visual scripting of Unreal Engine, so that's a good sign to look out for, Unreal Engine. That we've got our first engine to look at. Now I do, at the same time while we're pulling those up, I do know that there is Unity. There is RPG GameMaker. I don't think we're going to be making an RPG, or if that's going to be useful. I have heard it being used for other games as well, but I'm not sure if it's going to be useful for us here. The main one that has been I've heard of a lot about lately, though, it's a free open source engine that we may be looking at, is Godot. So they're probably going to be the first three that we're going to look at. Alright, so start by learning the basics of your engine. So that'll be potentially creating those replicas. Tutorial hells, where newer devs get stuck. They feel like they keep learning new things but can't actually do anything with the knowledge they've gained. This is because every problem requires different solutions in game development. Step-by-step tutorials make it difficult to retain the process of how things can be done. You'll still need the fundamentals they teach to even navigate the engine, though. So what do you do if tutorials stop helping? Start by figuring out exactly what you're trying to do and look up how to do those very specific things. The better you can define what you're trying to do, the easier it will be to actually get work done. Keep working on your game. Share it with others as soon as you've got something working to get feedback as early as possible. Hey, we're sharing it immediately. We've even only got the concept and we're sharing it. So if you want to give some feedback, join in the chat. Let me know. Let me know what you're thinking. Am I going in the right direction? This is a community, so join along. We're here on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Discord. All the links are on the Twitch About page. So join along, join in the chat, join the conversation. We're going to be doing polls to, okay, if I can't make a decision on something, we'll create a poll. You can help decide what might go into the game. Share, collect, feedback, iterate, repeat. We're doing that constantly. Don't look for funding. There are free tools and resources everywhere. We're doing this with no funding. Funding is my time, what we're putting in here. Bonus, you got a good grasp on how to make games. Try starting with some game jams. Again, we're not going to be looking at game jams to start with. Been working game for a while. Well, we haven't been doing that for a while yet. Working games as a hobby. Now I want to sell them. What makes a good game developer? Hi. Probably dreaming a bit there, but hey, we'll see. We might be one day. Always be learning. AB. Well, what's the ABC? I can't remember what the ABC one is. Perseverance and drive are key. Stay happy and healthy. Have thick skin. Criticism will come. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Focus on how to make ideas better instead of reinventing the wheel. Research early and often. Well, we're definitely researching right now as early as we can. A lot of good points there, but I think we don't need that page anymore. Okay, start making a game. How to start making a game, a guide to planning your first project. Here's what you'll find on the page. How to choose the right game idea, how to develop your game idea, how to plan your game project, how to manage your game projects. Idea, keep projects small, break it down to bite-sized tasks. That's what I'm seeing everywhere. Bite-sized tasks, small tasks, break it up into smaller bits and put it all together. No right way to do this. How to choose the right game idea. We've already got our idea. What am I good at? What do I like doing? What advantages do I have? Well, okay, what am I already good at? As I said, I've done some programming in the past, like coding, but it was a very long time ago. Pretty sure like C++, Visual C++, Visual Basic stuff. The last game I made was in school. It was a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire clone. It basically read to a Microsoft Access database of questions and answers, randomly choosing based on the difficulty level at the time, based on the money level. It was a very simple program that looked like old school Windows dialog boxes. There was no visual design or anything to that, and that was the last coding that I ever did. But again, as I said, I'm fairly I'm knowledgeable about the visual scripting, and I've had some minor experience in that recently in the last few years. Other side of that, command prompt, learning a little bit in terminal in Linux. I've had a Steam Deck for a little bit, so I'm learning different coding and stuff that in there, doing stuff, mods and all on that. Other than that, from programming, visual design. So I designed my logo. I've done lots of other things, graphic design and stuff in the past. I've designed posters for different events, pool events. I used to play pool quite a bit, 8-ball, and I've designed posters and stuff for that. Shirts for teams and stuff. Other posters for different events, public and private. So I've got some experience there with visual design and programs like Photoshop, etc. Write down what you like doing. Well, gaming. Gaming, anything to do with computers, technology, things like that. So we're combining those. They're the main two things. Then aside from that is visual storytelling. So movies, TV shows, and games. The games I like are things that have got story and all. I'm not a huge player of multiplayer games. I don't play things like COD or Battlefield, other shooters like that. I don't play multiplayer, like massive multiplayer games like WoW or anything. But I'll play things like Alan Wake 2 I've just started, the Assassin's Creed series, Control, anything with a good story is where I love to be. So hopefully we can incorporate that eventually. Lastly, the advantages of your specific situation. What's our situation? Okay, so free time. I've got plenty of free time in my spare time when I'm not working. I work full-time job during the day, so we're going to be streaming at least twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, from 8 PM Australian Eastern Standard Time. That's Brisbane GMT plus 10. Apart from that, we may do some extra streams here and there, like potentially like on a Friday night if I feel like it, etc. Otherwise, we might just do some game streaming. So, whenever I feel like it, really, I've got no time limits, except myself. I'd love to try and get a game out in the next 12 months. That would be a soft goal, soft target. Alright, so moving on, analyze your idea. Things you need to be able to actually build your project, such as 3D models, writing a story, artwork, game design. Write them down in order of importance if you can. So this is going into probably creating like the design document, etc. Like a proper design document. How to develop your game idea. Most minimum viable product in game development. Used to describe the first version of a product or service that's usable enough to provide early feedback from users, but basic enough that it can be made quickly and modified easily. When developing your game, the minimum viable product approach can help you to decide what the scope of your project will be, which is useful as it makes the task of building your game clearer and more specific. So what makes a minimum viable product? 2 key characteristics. It's the most basic version of a game that can exist that still fulfills the description of the idea. So, what, 1 level until you warp? It's shippable, meaning that what you make has enough value that it could be released as a playable game. But we want the multiple levels. I mean, that's piecemealing it anyway. So, essentially, create 1 level. It's going to be a replica of the next level, except adding more things like enemies, adding more ways they fire at you, things like that, and changing the design of the level. So we're still going to be doing like 1 bit, 1 bit, 1 bit, 1 bit, put it all together, however many levels there are. Going into more detail about that. And work out the minimum viable product. What will the player do? Alright, so we've already explained that. So you're surviving incoming attacks until your ship warp drive charges and you can warp to the next galaxy. Focus on doing, not experiencing. So while there are some games that are experienced more than they are played, try to think only in terms of what the player can directly control. So they can control the ship, moving forward, backwards, turning to aim, and firing weapons. Could be activating shields that you might collect and like build up or something, and then you activate it when you absolutely need. Firing different weapons might be just a standard like blaster or something that can be upgraded. Attacks that might come out automatically, like the spinning scythe in 20 minutes. Weapons that you drop, like a bomb or something like that. It stays where you are and you move away and it blows up when the enemies get close to it. Simple spaceship game, the concept might be to collect points without crashing. Well, simple spaceship game, yes, but that's not our concept. What features or mechanics must exist to enable this to happen? Write down any feature that absolutely must exist to enable someone to play the game in the way you've described in the core concept. Okay. So, 2. Oops. Mechanics. Okay, so in this example, the player will need to be able to move the ship, collect points, and need to be damaged if they hit an obstacle. And to enable any of that to happen, there need to be a way to start and end the game. Is this article designed for us? I know the other one was titled From Zero. So yeah, we're looking at player movement, forwards, backwards, turning, fire, weapons, blasters, drop bombs, activate shields. Collect experience. Points / orbs, something. Could be from the debris or something like that. Maybe maybe it could be something that helps charge the warp drive faster. Maybe. No, because we need ways to upgrade the weaponry and stuff. Or maybe that could be something like, okay, let's say it's going to be 60 minutes until it charges, but then some enemies will drop a battery charge or something like that, like something that when you collect it, it decreases, takes 5 minutes off your warp. Maybe that might be something that comes off of one of the bigger bosses, kind of like the chests. Let's throw that in. Let's throw that in over here. So we really need to change that from setting to concept. So instead of chests, perhaps special enemies drop something that charges, so that reduces warp charge time. So adding an extra note in there above that will be, what did we say? Oh, until X amount of time until warp drive charge. So we've already got that. So maybe 60 minutes till warp drive charges, with ways to reduce the time. I'm going to throw in that you definitely want to reduce the time. Because the longer it goes, the harder and harder it'll get. So if you get to a 30-minute mark, then yeah, it's going to start getting extremely hard. So you won't survive. Like, you may survive if you get to a 30-minute mark, but if you get to 45 minutes, close to 60, chances of survival, having not reduced it, is going to be slim unless you've like perfectly synergized the weapons and stuff to work together. So we're definitely going to need different weapon options and upgrades that synergize if chosen correctly, but won't help much if you choose the wrong options. Let's just increase the size, move that over. Alright, so back to the mechanics. So yeah, collect experience points, orbs. Avoid enemy fire or contact with enemy. Survive until warp drive charges. 60 minutes to start, with ways to reduce time. Alright. We want to get collect experience points, orbs, and ways to purchase upgrades. Main menu. I mean, that's here. While we're going in a bit too much detail there, that's the main mechanics. How to plan your game project. Breaking it down into smaller chunks. Everything's saying that, so that's what we're going to be doing. Break it down, break it down, break it down, put it all together until you get your major product at the end. Start with each of the broad features that are identified in the minimum viable product stage, such as player movement. And break it down, ask one question about that feature. Is this one task? If it's not, and it shouldn't be yet, you'll need to divide it into smaller tasks. Okay. Take the core concept, drive it, and divide into the largest chunks that you can. This will mean that each divided part is probably still quite vague and non-specific. What's important, however, is that each division is unique, meaning that it is different from the other divided parts. As much as possible, the divided parts shouldn't overlap with each, and if you added them together, they should form the whole feature where they come from, without missing anything out. Okay, so yeah, for example, player movement, so input, movement, so then input would get broken down into left joystick, forwards, backwards, right joystick, left, right turn, or spin around like the direction to which way you're facing for the turning. I think that because that's more similar to the 20 minutes. Movement itself is forwards, backwards on the ship and turning, and then you tie those together. So forward input creates forward movement, which everything tied together. Forward input, forward movement, down input, backwards movement, etc. creates player movement. Input detection, input event, thruster skip, script, rigid body. Okay, we got a lot of terms to learn. What's a rigid body? What's a thruster script? Thruster, okay, thruster. Thrust, move forward, like something that moves. So, a script that creates movement. Rigid body, what's a rigid body? Something stiff. Each project you'll eventually come with individual tasks. You keep track of how to manage your game project. Once you know what you want game to be, how you make it, you'll need to actually do it and keep doing it until it's finished, which can be challenging, especially if you're making your game in your free time. So how can you manage your project and yourself to make working on your game as easy and efficient as possible? Many different ways to manage your time. Manage each task as if you're giving it to someone. Even as a team of one, you'll be taking on multiple roles in your project. Project owner, manager, and developer. While being all those things at once can be helpful, as it always allows you to work in an extremely flexible way. Sometimes the easiest way to work is following a clear brief. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing with Excel, basically doing it manually. We'll probably create new documents for each game specifically. There's only basically delegating work yourself. Blah, blah, blah. project piece by piece. Break it down. Okay. And what we can from there. These are really going to be just overviews. Okay. Someone who's made some games on itch.io. Mechanics story mode. So note taking. So yeah, we've got the office suite. Collaboration. Game design. How to game design by Jesse Shell. Kama Sutra. Ah, you've planned out your idea. Congrats, that's amazing. Now you can work on the actual game. If you don't know how to code, I suggest doing stage 3 code before art. You don't want to create art that you'll trash later because you can't code it in. And how to draw, do not fret. Anyone can make something beautiful. 3 basic visual principles: color, shape, space. Thomas was alone. Great game. Think about how you can make it unique, with a distinct color scheme, fonts, shapes, and icons. While functional, it's the important information readable and obvious. Do the colors, fonts, icons distract from that at all? You have 2 observations. Frame by frame, draw out each frame of the animation. For this you should use sprite sheets with texture packer if using Unity sprite packer. Phone based. For each animated limb, animate the limb's position, rotation and whatnot in game. Be faster, easier and save memory. If you're doing 2D using Unity, try editing the pivots of sprites or Anima 2D. Some general miscellaneous art tips that apply to not only art and games but in other software as well. Tile. Patterned assets to create tiled images and save memory. Line patch slice assets with unscalable borders but a scalable center to create scalable images and save memory. Ah, okay, I see. So that's really distorting the image though. In multiple of 4 power 2, that just works because of binary and how bits work. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, etc. Using Photoshop, use file export layers to files to quickly export each layer as a file. Sketch. What's sketch? Freaking drawing. Principles Bureau equals material design. All your eyes do's and don'ts. Design blobs. Okay, so we're not getting into like design and stuff yet. 2D assets, Photoshop, game, paint tool, SAI. Go to GIMP, we've got Photoshop though. What's paint tool, SAI? I quite lightweight painting software. Software for like artwork sort of stuff. 3D assets. We're not going to be doing 3D yet. Free assets. Okay, I know plenty of places for fonts and icons and things like that. This stuff here. User game ready UI, 2D and 3D art. And library user generated art. So we're going to need assets. Let's just throw those into assets for now. Just this page that once we're ready, we can go back and look at. Code advice. Okay, so game engine and IDE, integrated development environment, basically an app that lets you code. Okay, Doris, gotcha, you can learn. These fundamentals should be enough to start. Code examples here in C++, one of the main languages the Unity 3D game development framework uses. Data types and variables. The root of all code is data. Data is stored in variables. You can declare a variable like this. So, int is the data type, it's integer, I know that. I is the variable name, and that assigns zeros. So let's say string is the data type, S is the variable name. Yep, you guessed it, pushing is the best kept. Its common data types are integer. I can't remember what long is. And integers.float and double. Oh wait. Integer and long are integers. Float and double are decimal numbers. And string is any sentence, even an empty one. If statements. If this, then do that. I know the basics, but yeah, we're gonna need to like definitely brush up on coding. Basic data structures. We have data, we have ways to evaluate and manipulate the data. We will store the data into some structure. Data structure, we should know as array, as lists, queues, stacks, and sets. I'll see, so we used an array in Microsoft Access for the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire 20 years ago. Number 039, you want to store something, you can store it in, oh Jesus, an array. Integer array, new integer 10, bracket declares an array. You assign a new array to array of size 10, that means it can hold 10 elements. And it looks like this. So whatever I is to the ith index of R equals 0. Persistent n. Okay. So got a part 1 and 2. Folder. coding. Mark coding. Okay. Based on the concept of objects. Some code in the form of procedures. Oops. Where did that page I just had go? Where did I pull that from? Oh, there. Naming conventions, name your classes, methods, and variables as something that obviously conveys its purpose. For instance, a melee attack function should be named melee attack, not MA. Or protect but also attack. You and others who read your code should know what's going on. Keep it simple, stupid. The KISS principle. You ever heard of that? KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Decomposition. Put code that repeats itself into a separate function. Call that function instead of duplicating the repeatable code. Trying to keep your code simple and stop bloat. Singleton design pattern allows data that a lot of things need to be stored in one place. What is that? Show a class as one instance and provide a global point of access to it. So restricting a class to one instance. There's times when a class cannot perform correctly. There is more than one instance of it. Common class is when the class interacts with an external system that maintains its own global state. Consider a class that wraps an underlying file system API because file operations can take a while to complete. A class performs operations asynchronously. Alright, that's more into learning to code, so we're definitely going to save this page in the research, and we can come back to that easy. Static avoidance beyond singletons that avoid making static variables. Their lifetime is the game's lifetime. They're slower and they can have unexpected behaviors in the editor. Observe design patterns. Allow things that happen depending on other things, not to waste the computer's time checking the other thing. Important Unity-specific things. Coroutines and scriptable objects. Alright, resources, game engines. Okay. Make your own. Requires C and C++. Low level, really, really low level. Yeah, we're probably not going to be creating our own game engine to start with. Okay. Unity. 2D, 3D, requires JavaScript, C hash, mid-level, cross-platform. So we've already got a search for Unity. Unreal Engine, 2D, 3D, requires C++, mid-level, cross-platform. Notes 2D support is not great. Okay, so we'll keep that in mind. Pixie.js, 2D requires JavaScript, mid-level, web-based. Okay, so we don't want web-based. We want to make a full-fledged game. GameMaker Studio, 2D, 3D requires GML. It's GML. GameMaker language, its own scripting language. But let's do a search for that. Throw that down there too. Corona 2D requires LUA. Lightweight, high-level multi-paradigm programming languages are mainly for embedded use in applications. Short learning curve. Okay. Beginner level, cross-platform. So we've got those two that are beginner level. So they're a potentially good starting point. Okay, Corona. That's not the right Corona we want. And we definitely don't want the other type either. So let's go Corona game engine. Okay. Is it called Solar 2D now? What's going on there? Let's open up another page. Corona game engine. Yes. Solar 2D. Okay, so it was renamed. Because of the pandemic. Of course. As I said, that's not what we want. We don't want that one. Okay, IDE's Visual Studio Code gives me no lag and has awesome VS Code exclusive features such as inline reference info, quick navigation, Visual Studio for Windows. Well, yeah, we're going to be making for Windows. Visual Studio, we can learn that too. Mono Develop comes with Unity, tends to lag. Unity assets. Okay, we've got this page saved, so if we're using Unity, we can come back to that. Audio, do you want audio? Well, yes. What's a game without audio? Sound design is one of the biggest things in game design. Audio can do wonders for immersion mode, but it can also cost memory. If the answer is yes, what audio? We include music, sound effects, voiceovers, and narration. Oh, background ambience, sound effects like gunfire, etc., explosions. Any of the above, record and mix them in a way that matches your game's mood. For example, Bastion uses organic mouth and instrument sounds, matching its game's world. Crypt of the Necro Dancer uses a blend of electronic beats and chiptune rock to match the colourful, rhythmic game. If your audio doesn't match your game's mood, it could detract from immersion. How will your audio match the game? Well, in space, no one can hear you scream, so it needs to sound empty. But it needs to sound, that's the point still. Retro sound effect generators, free sounds. Polish, that's right at the end. Bug testing. Get others not you to play it. You're gonna help join in and play test the game if you want. Play it on all targeted platforms. May work in the editor, but does it work where it matters? For Linux and the different versions of Android especially, I find that things get a little wonky. Let's check logs. Blah, blah, blah. Optimization. Market. Well, we're starting our marketing already. Social media, yep. While we're talking about that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. Okay. So let's save that one under research. So Shell Art of Game Design. Alright, so here's a book. Go away, cookies. A deck of cards, what? Okay. Interesting. This is like high concept stuff for that. Okay. What was this page? Game developer. Is there an article that not came up? Was it just the website itself? Excuse me a moment. Sorry about that, I didn't want to cough in everyone's ear. There's a bunch of blog articles and resources. They got actual guides, deep dives. These are probably things to read in my own time. I'll throw that into research. Alright. John Romero's level design rules. Always changing floor height when I wanted to change floor textures. Using special border textures between different wall segments and doorways. Being strict about texture alignment. Conscious use of contrast everywhere in a level between light and dark areas. Cramped and open areas. Making sure that if a player could see outside, they should be able to somehow get there. Being strict about designing secret areas on every level. Making my, so this is really, yeah, well, about 3D design. Making my levels flow so the player will revisit areas several times so they'll better understand the 3D space of the level. Creating easily recognizable landmarks in several places for easier navigation. Okay. It's really about 3D design. Alright, so this guy... Engines, art programs. I'm not going to be ready for audio yet. Let's throw his, what's his name? Pirate Software. Research, but then just check out these.
Unless you got really bright ass light on me, then it's like this. The Reaver's taunt? No? But do these guys taunt? Also, I
Eat that. Where were we? Tools. There is no best engine. Choose an engine that supports your style of game and your financial situation. Don't choose an engine on what people say is the best engine. There's no best engine. There are great engines for different kinds of games. Tools are not diminished in value based on their price or lack thereof. Hundreds of engines available out there. Go explore your options. Doki Doki Literature Club was made for free to use Python tool called RenPy that is specifically designed to make visual novels. Risk of Rain was made in GameMaker and MS Paint. Yes, you read that right. MS Paint. Risk of Rain. Which one was that? Okay. The cost of your tools does not define the value of what you make. Understand that this is an exhaustive list of engines. There are tons of engines out there, good or great. Variety of game styles. Go out there, find stuff, build stuff, and don't be an elitist about tools. G'day is a beast, completely built by its community, fully open source, entirely free. Excels in 3D is great for 2D and is now being used by major studios. Literally can't get a better deal as a small studio than free. Actually free, not free with royalties, real free. G'day used to make Dome Keeper and Endoparasitic. I've seen this one played on YouTube. GameMaker. Got that pulled up. Great engine for making 2Ds, but not very strong with 3D. You can use the free trial indefinitely for non-commercial use. Also exports to desktop targets as well as web and mobile. Monetization is very competitive at $100 one time for a lifetime license. Consoles it's $80 per month or $80 per year. All of these prices are regionalized pricing, making it affordable pretty much anywhere. They don't take royalties, which is pretty great. If your game takes off as well, GameMaker Studio was used to make Heartbound, Hyperlight Drifter, Risk of Rain. Wait, I thought... Oh, GameMaker, yeah, it said that. Nuclear Throne, Pizza Town, Undertale. Played Undertale, I've played Hyperlight Drifter. Unreal, Powerhouse of 3D Arena. Great monetization model. If your game makes under 1 million over its lifetime, you pay them nothing. Anything beyond that has 5% royalty tagged onto it. I believe that may have changed. I've heard about changes to the pricing of Unreal. They're also entirely free to use for unmonetized projects. Definitely great for startups, but it can have a steep learning curve. Unreal was used to make Fortnite, Conan Exiles, Kingdom Hearts 3, and Octopath Traveler. I've played Fortnite. I haven't played Kingdom Hearts 3. I have played Octopath Traveler. Ren'Py, fantastic engine made for visual novels, completely free to use, and there's a great community around it. Definitely able to make some powerful and interesting games. We're not making a visual novel. Oh, excuse me. A Sprite. So this is about like sprite creation and stuff. I'm not sure if Pix Editor that I've got is the best. Yeah, Blender, that's for 3D modeling, so that'll be in the future. So we're not going to be using Blender to start with. Audio we'll look into later.
Into making YouTube content.
Okay. So the engines themselves. So far, sounds like GameMaker, Corona may be one of the better two to look into, and potentially Godot. So let's pull up all their pages. I'll pull up both of them. Okay. So that is the legit site there. It's an archive a bit further. Let's go another folder. Art. Save. Let's just throw a sprite into there because we don't need art yet. Alright, so Unreal. Indie games. Features, licensing, FAQ. Probably not going to be looking at Unreal. It's probably going to be a little too complex to start with, and everything is saying it's more focused around 3D and not great with 2D. That might be development goals to make a game in Unreal. It might be the game for the second one, who knows. Features. Actually, that was the page. I'll go back to it in a sec. Where's licensing again? Royalties fly after 1 million. Visuals are small business less than 1 million in gross revenue. No revenue limits. Okay, no, it is only 5% still. I thought it changed somewhere. Was it Unity that changed? Alright, so Unity engine. Okay. What's the pricing? That's one of the biggest important things. We need free. Personal free. Unity engine. Splash screen customization. Yeah, we probably will want multi-console release. So we're not gonna be able to afford Unity. I thought Unity used to be like free 100% or something. G'day. Different way to make games, innovative design, is the right language for the job, dedicated 2D engine, simple and powerful 3D, open source. Okay, so how to contribute. Document reform. Features. Show this scene-driven design. Build your game from simple blocks. Let's create a complex and reusable scenes. Add scripts to your scenes. Customizable built-in behavior to implement in your game. Stem fee on features provided by the engine. Make your scenes into full feature components. The tools for your designers to tweak and adjust the look and function. New data-driven elements. Maybe. GameMaker. Go away, cookies. hey, they're saying about creativity and I'll make it in 15 minutes as the asteroids. So, seal features free, completely free, no credit card required. Make your first game with our free tutorials. Upload your games, level up your game development, and release your games commercially. That's why we need to find out what it will cost. One-time purchase, $100. That's affordable when it comes to release time. Console, you need the Enterprise. See, it needs to definitely make sure it makes money then to release that then. So perhaps it's an initial Steam release and then gets ported to console later. So it's a cost to keep in mind. So what was the... Godot is completely free, 100%. Manage your own pace. So Gmail visual. So this is where you can like drag boxes and stuff. And can you switch back and forth? That might help me with learning. What does chat think so far? Alright, Corona. So apparently that was easy to learn. Says it's completely free. Guides on how to use it. Alright, so let's see what we're gonna do here. Let's create a poll. I think we're going to be looking at one of those three. So Godot, GameMaker, or Solar 2D, or slash Corona. Used to be called Corona. Let's create a poll here. Which game engine looks the best to start with? Now, we're going to go on a quick 10-minute break in a moment. And we're going to go for a 10-minute break. I'll leave the poll up during the break. You can vote on it. And then once we come back from the break, we're going to check out some YouTube videos, and perhaps that might give us some more information. But I'd like to see where chat is getting their opinion to start with. So, GameMaker. And Solar 2D slash Corona. So you can vote Solar. Add what's that for? So 600. Let's start the poll. Alright, so there's the options, guys. So vote in chat. Vote Godot for Godot. Vote GameMaker for GameMaker, and vote Solar for Solar 2D slash Corona. In the meantime, I'm going to go for a quick 10-minute break, and we will come back and check out some YouTube videos. Do not go away. And welcome back. This is Zero XP Studio and I'm Zero XP Dev. So we left off with finding out our first bit of information about some potential choices for game engines. Now we're going to throw quickly that search we threw into Google into YouTube, but we're going to also throw in some differences, like have a look at the differences between the three game engines that we've narrowed down to and see if we can narrow it down further. While we're checking that, let's see how the poll's going. We're honestly nothing, no votes. Come on chat, get involved. Let's get some information on what engine we're going to go with. Why is the poll not closing? Okay. I'll worry about that later. Oh, it's gone there. Our captions is still working. Okay. Alright. So the top result, 6 steps to create your first game, nice short video. Watch this before making your first indie game, making your first game basics. How to start game development, extra credits. Extra credits is a good channel, I've watched them for a few things. Game development for dummies, the ultimate guide. Thomas Brush. He's quite knowledgeable on game development. GameMaker's Toolkit. He's another person I follow. Oh, excuse me. How to become a game designer. I started making games with no experience. What was Thomas's other video? Okay. Alright, I think that's enough to have a look at quickly.
Getting started making games can be real daunting. Between art, programming, design, there's so much to do. Where do you even start? In this video, you'll get 6 steps to get you started. We'll also drop in some tips to help you learn fast. Step 1. Choose a good game engine. Game developers use powerful programs called game engines to make games. Game engines handle most of the complexity of drawing things, playing sounds, or calculating physics, which saves you a ton of time. The engine I recommend to learn is Godot. Unlike other engines like Unity, it comes with an accessible programming language made for game developers called GDScript. Using GDScript leads to writing shorter code than other languages, making it a bit easier and faster to learn. You will never be stuck with your first engine. The foundations and skills you will learn will stick with you when you decide to use another technology. Once you know how to program, it's really fast to pick up new languages. Regardless, Godot is one of the most powerful game engines out there, and it's especially great to make 2D games. Step 2. Join a community. It's best to have others to ask for support when learning. By joining an online community, you will learn a lot from others. You will see you are not alone in your struggles. You can ask questions and get help when that happens. You can find all the Godot communities on the engine's website and pick the platform you like most to hang out. The Discord server is very active. Step 3. Pick a ridiculously simple project. Making games can be really fun, but it also requires many skills. At first, what you need the most is to learn those skills. You'll learn so much in the beginning that it's best to make really short projects. I recommend to start with toys, like just a character that walks and jumps, a ball you can throw and bounce around, and all kinds of things that take little time to create and that are really playful. This approach allows you to do projects that will just take a week or two, even as a hobby. Maybe you have a dream game idea. You'll want to set it aside while learning because you will not be able to make it initially. When you're new to making games, you largely underestimate the work that goes into it. For example, games like Final Fantasy or GTA are the work of hundreds of experienced professionals working full-time for years. That is millions of hours of work. Even a game like Stardew Valley, made by only one person, took 7 years. So start simple. Create a couple little toys or game mechanics, and soon you will be able to put them together into one complete little game. Step 4. Find good courses and tutorials. These days, you will find many courses and tutorials to get you started for free here on YouTube and on other websites. We prepared a complete learning path for you with many tutorials and courses that are entirely free. You will find everything you need to get started there. There's a link in the description below. We're also creating an in-depth course to learn game development from zero with Godot. We're on Kickstarter right now to fund this ambitious project. I'll let you know more at the end of the video. Step 5. Focus on programming at first. Every game is a computer program, so there's no way around learning that. It's the code and how the code expresses design ideas that makes the game a game. The idea here is to focus on learning just one skill at a time because there is so much to learn. If you try to practice design, art, music, sound, and programming all at once, it will slow you down a lot. Programming is what brings game to life, which is why I recommend focusing on it first. Regarding art and sound, you can get complete free asset packs from Kenny and Kay Loosberg. There are complete sets released in the public domain to create all kinds of games. You can use them to your heart's content. Step 6. Plan your projects to learn fast. Give yourself clear and short deadlines for every project and try to practice at least 30 minutes a day. Daily practice will help you build skills as fast as humanly possible. If you have a full-time job and a family and that's too much, pick whatever works for you. Even 5 or 10 minutes are better than nothing. I recommend to write your goals on a calendar and make a new project every week when getting started. If you try to make a complete game, it may take you more than a month or even several months, but if you start with toys, you can complete one within a day to a week. Setting and achieving small goals like that will help you stay motivated. That's the 6 steps. They're a bit broad, but hopefully they give you a clear learning path. You can go further with our complete free learning guide for Godot, which links to over a dozen courses and tutorials we picked for you. As I told you, we're currently on Kickstarter to create a course that will teach you how to code and make games from zero. Our course will give you videos, guides, cheat sheets, and an interactive practice.
Okay. Couple of good tips there.
Every year, we get a lot of requests to do sponsored shows, and we end up turning the vast majority of them down. But every once in a while, somebody approaches us and suggests something really interesting. The truth is, I have run into two it was going nowhere, and I don't know if we can want to be careful about is scope. Many people pick up a game engine dreaming of making the types of games they play. Unfortunately, this often just is not possible, as you're not even going to create something. If you start with a huge weeks to build, be proud of that better and faster. Soon, plug yourself into an idea and begin planning things out. Which, of course, brings us to tutorials. Any major engine has tons of people who happily make tutorials about pretty much everything. Go find them, watch them, study them. To get something done. It's a fantastic place to look at what you'd call minimal graphics. Accept that and embrace it as part of your design. Constraints force us to be creative. And if
Hey guys, my name is Thomas Brush, owner of Atmos Games. By the end of this video, you're gonna have a full understanding of how exactly video games are made. I'll even throw in a secret at the end of this video that took me, well, 10 years to figure out and has made my career as a game developer so much easier.
Let's come back to
Now,
that
obviously,
video.
there's a ton of different engines.
If there's one question I get asked more than anything else, it's this. How do I become a game designer? Their teams. A very small mobile game, for example, the game designer might be responsible for every aspect of design. Concepts like progression. Bridge between design is to come up with ideas for scripting language, to also do scripting for specific encounters, or to tie missions together in an ideas will be endlessly tweaked and or interpersonal skills like communication. You'll need a strong portable environment. Learn how to code. You could use whatever the case, you've got to show you're working. Make sure you have clear documentation for how you dreamt up, designed, implemented, and refined your ideas, so you can show potential employers proof of your design thinking skills. For level designers, I spoke to one designer who got the job because they'd made a level for the firm's previous game. Read everything in the industry. In of itself,
It's really about getting into the
This
industry.
video is sponsored by Core. Core is the new free game creation platform that lets you build, publish, and play games. It's an amazing platform to quickly get started designing, especially if you want to create a 3D multiplayer game. Pick a framework and start building your own games right away using thousands of free, high-quality music, sound, and art assets, all with no coding required. But if you really want to dig in, Core lets you create your own game logic using Lua. You can build games from scratch, or remix and reimagine content shared by other creators. And when it's time to publish, your game will go live on the Core platform with the click of a button. Right now, Core is hosting the Secret Spaces Game Jam along with extra credits. There's still plenty of time to join and use Core to make an amazing world that anyone can enjoy and explore.
I was at the gym and I got a call from my indie game publisher. They were tired of the as a career. In my experience, games take about twice as long as you think they're gonna take to make. So if you're thinking of making your game in, I don't know, a year, it's gonna take 2 years. But why is that? Video games are the pinnacle of human expression. In fact, I like to call game development playing God. You're creating a new dimension. And my prediction is game development will soon be rebranded as, I don't know, world birthing or something like that. Seriously, give it 20 years and the developers who create worlds will essentially be classified as gods, with players living and serving their creators in their virtual realities. This little Big Bang is a cocktail of every art form and craft, mixed into a singular product. Story, 2D art, 3D art, music, sound effects, architecture, coding, player psychology, game design, voice acting, sound design, lighting. So that's why it takes so long. But the real question is, why is it so hard to predict how long this takes? It all comes down to the lack of understanding each ingredient and how they react with each other. So yeah, let's talk about this massive cocktail of ingredients that make up a game. For example, here's the industry standard sequence for building a house built in about, let's say, a year for simplicity. You prepare the construction site, you pour the foundation, you do the plumbing, the electrical, insulation, drywall, interior fixtures, exterior finishes, interior trim, driveway, flooring, you move on to countertops and exterior grading, and then you finish off with bathroom fixtures and exterior landscaping. And then, don't forget, you have to sell it. Now, how long would this house take if we decided to build it in reverse? Well, I'm thinking a decade, maybe? Not only is this house gonna take 10 times as long to build, but it's gonna make 10 times less in profit because it sucks. And the same is true with a game. The order in which you create a game is everything. Okay, so you're probably depressed by now. Don't be. The solution to this problem is actually pretty simple. Basically, all you need to do is listen to developers who've already done it, like me, and also other YouTube channels focused on game development like Jonas Tyroller, Game Dev Unlocked, and David RB. So here's the sequence to building a game properly. Get your paper and pen out and write this down. It's gonna save you thousands of dollars and hours. First, start with your budget. And I know what you're thinking, Thomas, I don't have a budget. Sure you do. Let's give you a pretend hourly rate of $50 per hour and estimate how much time you can emotionally handle dedicating to this project. Let's assume 5 hours a week part-time for 6 months. That's 100 hours at $50. That's $5,000, aka a really tiny game. It's like a little condo in Kansas, if we're sticking to the building analogy. So what does this mean? It means you need to compare your little game to little indie games that have a similar budget or schedule. We then use this comparison to map out our GDD, and that's a game design document. This is basically your blueprint or outline for your game. Here's a great example of a GDD. It's linked in the description. Then we build the game. Well, kinda. We build out a prototype, a demo, the first level maybe. With minimal graphics, minimal being the key word here, minimal sound, minimal everything. We want to know that this game idea even works. And a good rule of thumb is if your game isn't fun at its most abstract form, it's not going to be good at all. Just ask Bob Ross. Look, he always starts with abstract colors first, and then he tightens the screws. Ah, there's another metaphor. IKEA furniture. You start loose, and then you tighten the screws later when you're sure you've built something that actually works. Okay, now we have this generic prototype that kind of looks like crap, but it works. My method is to polish this prototype visually, musically, ambiently, and toss in story elements, but only for the prototype. You don't build out the entire game now. Rather, you create exactly what this game will be as a finished product, but only that first level, or the first 15 minutes of gameplay. This is where me and some other developers might differ. Some developers may want to build out every mechanic, every level in a rudimentary form first. The problem with this approach is it actually removes a huge possibility from the developer, finding funding for the project. The reason I recommend polishing the heck out of your demo is so you can seek funding from a publisher or crowdfunding or investors. Now, it's super hard to do this with a crappy looking demo. Once you secure funding, or maybe you decide to not receive funding, you use this demo as the standard for your game. This is the template. In a way, your new mechanics and levels are sequels to your first level. And we all know sequels are quicker to make. Just ask Satan's very own offspring, Disney.
What am I supposed to say, Jesus?
Now, obviously, there's a ton of granular steps nested inside this sequence, but hopefully this gives you a generic roadmap to success. Honestly, I don't want you to make the mistakes that I made for Neversong. Speaking of which, did I ever get sued? Nope. I took the phone call from my publisher well, and out of necessity, I took the current build of Neversong and essentially used the exact method I described and scaled the game. I used the first couple levels of the game as a template and quickly fleshed out several more levels and finished it in 6 months. It's interesting how a publisher breathing down your neck actually helps you make better decisions. We eventually sold the game to Apple, released it on other platforms, and made more than $500,000 in revenue. And by the way, I can't disclose the exact numbers, sorry. If you found this video helpful, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and download the free resources in the description.
Alright, we got a few tips from that. Oh crap, I wanted to check his other links.
I was at the gym.
Let's throw those into research. Alright, this is what we want here to download. This is going to be a template for a design document. We have to sign in. What is this service? SlideShare. Is it only that single page? Download free for 30 days. Okay, free trial. We'll download what we want. We're gonna get as many of these while we're on the free trial. Alright, that looks good. Now let's go cancel that account.
engines to create games with. You've got Unity, Unreal, Godot, the list goes on, but believe it or not, video games are made pretty much the same way no matter what engine you're using. Now, to create a game, you take assets, and that's basically just PNGs or JPEG images or maybe 3D models, MP3 files, WAV files, really any kind of digital file you can think of, and then you attach a script to that asset. Now, these scripts are basically, I don't know, magical spells that tell the assets how to behave in the world, or what we're going to call the scene. So for example, I could tell a PNG image to move left or right if the player presses left or right buttons on the keyboard. This is a script interacting with a asset. Now, any seasoned game developer is going to have a minimum of, let's say, 3 applications running while they're making their game at all times, because they're going to be going back and forth between asset creation, game creation, and coding. So making games requires you to have a ton of software open all the time because, well, you're creating and tweaking all kinds of assets and then incorporating them into a single piece of software. And again, that's going to be your engine. That's Unity, Unreal, Godot, GameMaker. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to all of them, but in my opinion, Unity is the easiest to learn and is a decent tool in creating indie games and also AA games. So if you're looking at making a AAA game, I don't know, your dream open world game, then Unreal might be a better bet. But for now, Unity is pretty awesome. Okay, so how do you create these assets for your game? Okay, so here's the thing about making games. Creating assets is like 50% of the work. Manipulating them to do stuff in the game is the other 50%. So for example, if you're making, let's say, a 2D game and you understand Photoshop, you're probably going to spend a lot of time making your game in Photoshop. Unity is only used when you're ready to make that 2D art actually do something. Now, the same is true for all other assets. For example, sounds are edited in Audacity or maybe FL Studio, or 3D models in Blender, textures in Photoshop, scripts in Visual Studio. I mean, this is ultimately where most noobs get hung up. They struggle because the amount of tools they're going to learn is, frankly, kind of terrifying. But here's the good news. If you know how to create just some assets, you're way closer to making games than you think. Okay, so we create these digital files and then save them into an assets folder. We can then drag them into a new scene, and that's, again, just basically a blank level in our game engine. Once you've placed a few assets, you can begin controlling these assets with these magical scripts. Got it so far? Now, here's a big problem. What if we want to create a 2D character for our game? Well, we would place the sprite in our game, but we would also maybe want to play some MP3 files with that sprite. But we also want it to collide with the floor and the walls using physics code, and maybe also show a font above the sprite. How exactly do we create a single character with all these different digital files? Well, these various digital files or assets, they end up being called components in Unity. And they can be slapped onto an empty container called a game object. Or in Unreal's case, it's called an actor, but for the purposes of this video, we're just gonna say game object. Okay, so let's say you drag a PNG into a scene in Unity. It's not a PNG object. Unity will automatically create an empty container for you. Again, this is called a game object. And this newly created game object will then contain a sprite renderer component on that game object. And that sprite renderer component not only has a slot containing what the actual sprite should be, but also its X and Y flip values, its coloring, and other parameters. Essentially, a game object is a Frankenstein of an infinite amount of component combinations that all have tweakable variables, and we'll talk about variables in a minute. So here are a few examples of game objects. A player game object. This is a player with a single game object that contains a capsule collider component, and that's just an invisible force field component that interacts with the world and prevents the player from passing through the ground or walls. Okay, so the player game object may also contain something, let's say, like a rigid body, which kind of sounds like a collider, but Maybe think of it this way. A rigid body makes something interact with gravity. A collider makes it solid. So a UFO, for example, without a rigid body will simply float in place. The player can also contain audio sources that will play sounds. That's a component. It can also contain a text component, a camera component. So a UFO sounds like a color. It prevents the player from passing through the ground or walls. Okay, so the player game object may also contain something, let's say, like a rigid body, which kind of sounds like a collider, but maybe think of it this way. A rigid body makes something interact with gravity. A collider makes it solid. So a UFO, for example, without a rigid body will simply float in place. The player can also contain audio sources that will play sounds. That's a component. It can also contain a text component, a camera component, or even any custom components that you've written. And these are just basically scripts. And you can also include some from your team, or maybe some from online forums. That's totally fine. Frankly, these are my favorite. Now keep in mind, you can parent game objects to other game objects. I mean, this essentially means that the parent object's scale, rotation, and position will impact its children. I mean, ultimately, you can have as many children in a game object as you want. And even the children can have children. You can have a massive family tree inside each parent game object. This makes it so much easier to deactivate entire parts of levels or groups of enemies or move a bunch of objects around in the editor. Okay, so now that we understand game objects, how exactly is the player going to see them? Well, we need to tell Unity what to look at. For example, should it follow the player smoothly from side to side, like a 2D game? Or is it first person? Or should it follow from an isometric perspective? Or maybe the camera's still, like in Resident Evil. This is all handled by something called, you guessed it, a camera. And you can stack as many cameras in Unity or Unreal as you want and just switch them on and off. These cameras are still game objects. They are just game objects with a camera component on them. And maybe a script that tells the camera component what to do or what to look at. Or you could just use the built-in Cinemachine tool to quickly get the camera to follow the player, no matter what style of game you have. The Cinemachine tool is actually pretty sweet. Okay, so what about making these game objects, these prefabs, actually do something, anything? Well, you do this with those magical scripts. Well, think about your game objects like they're your teenage kids. They need to be guided, they need to be told what to do, how to behave, and what things are okay, what aren't okay, and I guess ultimately what the rules are. Now, sadly, you have to be really clear with how you communicate to your teenage kids because, well, they're super rebellious and they tend to find just about every possible way to break your rules. So your teenage kids in Unity speak C# and C++ in Unreal. Now, in both cases, both platforms have something called visual scripting. Visual scripting is awesome. It makes it a lot easier to write code without really writing code. I mean, it's a great idea though to understand how to actually write code from scratch. Okay, so you slap this script onto your game objects and they basically become possessed, almost as if by like, I don't know, a demon. What you're telling the object to do is on a constant loop in their mind. Command will be on repeat forever until you exit play mode. This repeating command will loop in what's called a constant update function. The update function continually tells your game object what to do on repeat. If I say move right in the x-axis 1 unit over and over and over and over and over and over again, the object will slowly iterate and move to the right. Does that make sense? But what if we want to maybe just tell the game object to do something once, like play a burp sound when the game starts? You do this in what's called the start function, not the update function, the start function. Okay, so we've got the start function, which happens when you start the game, and also the update function, which is a constant loop over and over and over again, kind of like a psychopath. This is ultimately how scripting works in games. Everything else is flowing from this approach. Singular one-off functions that get fired once, maybe by starting the game or by firing them with a single player input, and an update function, which is for things like constantly moving the player with a speed or acceleration variable. Wait, what? What's a variable? Okay, so a variable is, well, first off, a variable is everything. I mean, without variables, you yourself would not exist right now. You would poof into nothingness. Our world contains variables all around us. I mean, here's an example of a variable. Right now, your dead variable is set to false. That's a Boolean variable. That's true or false. Your eye color variable is blue. That's a string, right? Or maybe it's green or brown. Your age is, I don't know, 28. That's an integer variable. Your height is 5.1. That's a float variable, basically just decimal numbers. All right, so you take these variables and you use them inside one-off functions like start. And in the start function, we can have the position of the player start at the start position variable, or the hair color be the color black variable, or the health be the start health integer. Or maybe we want to do a one-off function like shoot. It's only going to happen once when the player clicks the mouse. So the gun animator is going to play the shoot animation. The gun audio source is going to play a sound, the shoot sound at the shoot volume. Or maybe the gun particles will be activated when the player presses shoot. That's all happening inside of a one-off function called shoot. Ultimately, a game is a bunch of assets and scripts latched onto a simple game object and moving and behaving based on conditions and player inputs using scripts. Now here's the secret I wanted to tell you as we conclude. Games generally should not be made from scratch. All assets, including art, music, and even scripts, can be purchased from things like the Unity Asset Store, TurboSquid, CraftPix, Epidemic Sound for music, or Artlist.io for sound effects. I mean, the sky's the limit of where you source your assets. And yes, you usually have to pay for all this, but of course, if you have the money, it's gonna save you a ton of time in the long run to just buy licenses to pre-made assets, bring them into Unity, tweak them, and move on. Of course, you wanna have a decent understanding of asset creation in general, script writing, and Unity or Unreal, but ultimately a seasoned and wise developer, and I've been doing this for 10 years, this is exactly what I do, this developer will eventually take advantage of pre-made assets. Now, obviously, you need to tweak and flip these assets to fit the tone, style, and design of your game, and frankly, that's where the great developers outshine the bad ones, being able to be economical with sourcing assets and flipping them to be a cohesive style that fits with their brand. Now, if you can do that, you're gonna make an awesome game.
Okay. So we've got some ideas on how we're going. So to break down further, Hello versus GameMaker versus Solidity. To the game engine. Doesn't seem to be in me a lot of information about Solitude. It was the one using LUA. Alright, so I think that's out. Okay, got a few videos there. Let's flip through
Which
them
is
quickly.
the best game engine? You often ask us this question. It's an easy one to answer. There's none. A better question would be, which is the best engine for me? Because that's what matters, that you have an engine that fits your needs the closest. In this video, you will learn the pros and cons of the Godot game engine compared to GameMaker. As I don't have much experience with GameMaker, I asked Hardbeast and Emilio for insights. They're experienced developers who worked with both programs for a long time, including on commercial games. Hardbeast also taught both engines professionally.
Hi, my name is Ben. I make tutorial videos and devlogs for game dev on my YouTube channel Heartbeast. Here is how quickly you can get a project up and running and testing certain mechanics and ideas that you have. And it's very quick for prototyping, and that makes it really useful.
What I like the most about GameMaker is the fact that anyone can make a game even if you don't know programming because of the drag and drop system. I feel like the drag and drop system is one of the best features that GameMaker has, and it's a very good introduction to the main concepts that you need to know, and it was at least my introduction to programming as well. So I started doing drag and drop games and then I moved to code. I feel like that's the best feature.
My favorite thing about Godot is probably the node and scene system. It's a little bit tricky for beginners when they first start learning it, but it's been super helpful to me as my projects have increased in size and complexity. It helps me to keep my coupling low and continue to work on the project without running into tons and tons of bugs every time I need to add a new feature.
The thing I like the most about Godot is the license and the scenes. The license is the freedom that you have from having all the code to your disposal. So if you have any issues with Godot itself, you can go to the source code and modify it. And the scenes, I feel, is a very clever way of organizing your games and to make reusable systems. So I really like those two things. I feel like those are the strongest things for Godot right now.
Comparing GDScript and GML, GDScript coming from Godot and GML coming from GameMaker, is actually pretty interesting. In a lot of ways they feel similar to me. The syntax is the one biggest difference I feel between the two, where GDScript follows a Python-like syntax and GML follows a more traditional syntax with curly brackets. There's obviously a lot of little differences in the functions that you use and stuff like that, but between the two they were both fairly easy to pick up and learn. I think I do like the syntax in Godot a little bit more. I prefer that simple Python-like syntax. These two are really a lot of little more tricks, and GML follows a more traditional syntax with curly brackets. There's obviously a lot of little differences in the functions that you use and stuff like that.
Language. In GML, I remember working with a lot of stuff and having a lot of limitations, especially with arrays, dictionaries. There were no functions. I believe they added those recently. So yeah, definitely GDScript feels more like a scripting language, and GML feels more like a tool that you can use maybe just a little bit to add some functionality. And if you're doing some real work in GameMaker, you need an extra tool to make GML better.
The number one feature that I miss the most from GameMaker is definitely surfaces. They're a very powerful tool in GameMaker, and the closest thing I can find in Godot is viewports. But viewports are still a little bit finicky in Godot and still need some work, I think, before they can be quite as useful as I found surfaces to be in GameMaker. So that's definitely a feature that I miss while I'm using Godot. And I look forward to when viewports get a little bit more polish and can help replace the feature.
And when you're doing some prototypes, you can jump in, make a doodle, and have that into your game. And in Godot, you start using the icon.png, which is a meme now. But yeah, I feel like we need more tools to create or edit sprites from within the editor. That would be great, and that's something I miss.
Depends on what you need, or their licensing structures, and advance. See it in the editor there. It's kind of a what you see is all the time they do UI. Code structure isn't quickly than they do in GameMaker. I like how lightweight Godot is, but that have been important to me.
That once you master 2D, you can transition to 3D really seamless. There are people who miss the biggest
advantages of Godot over GameMaker, and once again, this is similar. GameMaker is going to have better support for consoles if you're trying to port yourself. So you can port to console, get on consoles easier for a single and Godot. Pretty comfortable with game position where you should definitely consider it's a 2D and such.
In Godot, the tools are there. It's not exactly Godot. It can be a little
Godot fit my needs better, and so I'm going to continue using Godot. That doesn't mean
choosing a game engine is easy, but if you're just starting out or aren't sure which engine is best suited for your needs, it can feel pretty overwhelming as you may be stuck with your choice for several. Most important you want because you can have those asset stores, so there's a 90 collisions, it's extremely fast to open and run, it has an easy to understand programming language, totally written, and a third-person controller. These like graphical engine still doesn't have with Unity, which has surviving. It's only once plus it's just thousands of developers just stopped their recent changes, and I still with your game for the convoluted part E versus for the engine. Quickly I said that, but for support as the other two options, the built-in kept pretty high popularity and the engines already have them built in. For example, I use raycast a lot to detect collisions, and they're not built in. It's basically like poking this wall and being like, is there something here? Oh yeah, that's a wall. However, I just found a free package for it, and more often than not there'll be.
All right, this next one comes from Rangor Code, and it's tested, it's used. If you're looking like, hey, I want to develop a game, I really want it to be on PS5, Switch, Xbox, all of those, I could see going with Unity or Unreal, because the pathway's easier.
Godot, a free and open source game engine capable of building high quality, provides an editor that allows you to create, visualize, and program the behavior of game objects. However, Godot weighs in at just 35 megabytes while providing a full-featured developer experience that's approachable to beginners. Game code can be written in C#, C++, or a purpose-built language called GDScript. It feels like a cross between TypeScript and Python, and dramatically reduces the amount of complexity and boilerplate when coding game scripts. To create a game, you start with a scene, which itself contains a tree of nodes. Nodes are like building blocks that can be assigned as the child of another node to control the appearance and behavior of objects in the scene. Any node can have a script attached to it, allowing you to write code that updates the object for every frame in the game loop. You can then save the scene to disk and use it within other scenes. When your awesome game is complete, it can be exported with a single click to desktop, web, and mobile platforms, or to consoles like Nintendo Switch, PS4, and Xbox via third-party providers. To build your own game right now, download it and create a new project.
It's been a long and arduous journey, but I'm finally ready to make a decision about my game engine. Hello and welcome to the Infinite Inkwell, or welcome back to the Infinite Inkwell. I'm Lewis and I'm on a journey to discover new ways of telling stories. At the moment, I'm doing...
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Coding can be overwhelming to learn, especially if you're younger. Huge pain in the butt from scratch. But use Squarespace. If you so connect your social Squarespace.com, old wise monk text. Now the idea is that moving around these colorful boxes or shapes and graphically seeing yourself program is a lot easier to understand than just in the boxes. What game engine should you choose? Every engine has its own strengths and weaknesses. Now, typically launched in 2007, Scratch is a visual programming website that actually focuses more on educational purposes, where most of you uses it in their CS Learn. This is probably the one I've used Construct to make everything from mobile games to even side-scroller MMORPGs. The visual scripting is in like these columns, and it actually makes it a lot easier to organize and work on larger projects, which is a lot better if you're with Construct. Honestly, only if you got the money, it's a fantastic tool. Number 3, the engine versus it. Rumors. So to be honest, I think it has a ton of potential. I know that GameMaker was actually my first game engine, and it'll always hold a special place in my heart for that reason.
Here's the summary of today's topic. I'll explain them one by one to your small brain. Let's start with GameMaker. In my opinion, GameMaker is easier to learn than Godot. When I was making my first game, Soul Chase, I tried remaking it in Godot just like I did with Polaris. This was 4 years ago, and I only had a few months of experience with game.
Over the years, the one question I get time.
I used Godot, Unity, and GameMaker, and today I want to share my experience and thoughts with you. I'll be contrasting them by highlighting their. Identifying Godot is being able to create 2D games super quickly. What takes 30 minutes in other engines, at least in terms of the 2D environment, can be created in Godot in a matter of just a few minutes. This is due to the node system that makes everything so fast, easy, and organized the way I see it. Also, something to highlight about Godot is the documentation. The documentation is just amazing. It is super well explained. You can help to getting things organized, and the 3 it is. Also, GameMaker is not that difficult, but and also other thing to highlight and doing. I'm not saying that it existed before I would exist, so it is like a newer engine. It also means that there, of course, the tutorials, but not as many. Is that there is information everywhere, okay? Larger errors and bugs than in any other build scripts. I know the loading times, okay? Whenever you want to controversial the Unity device in Godot, that system is amazing. It really same object. Also, the move and collide function was in the movement system. So this is the final table with the main differences between these 3 engines. Of course, there are still lots of things that could be compared, but well, I hope that at least with this you do have a better understanding of all these engines from my experience. Okay, well, basically let me know what you.
Everything in every game is.
Alright. So I think from everything I'm saying, we're probably going to be looking at GameMaker. So it's got the visual scripting. It's free while we're using. We only have to pay once we want to release. So I can make a bunch of test games to start with, and then go from there. So, where are we? Download. So we're setting up. Okay, so there's our GameMaker studio installed. Okay, set counter set up. Alright. So that puts us ready to start making a game. We're gonna potentially start with some of those basic just concept things. Whoops, don't want to bring that down. So it's got make your own arcade game in 15 minutes. Might do something like a Pong, an Asteroid, Pac-Man, etc. like we saw some of those other ideas. And then we'll get kickstarted into our game. So we're going to leave that in there for tonight. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back on Thursday, 8 PM Australian Eastern Standard Time, Brisbane GMT plus 10. In the meantime, hope you enjoyed watching and learning about game engines and how to choose. And we'll get started on Thursday. Like, subscribe and follow, and we'll see you next time.
Oh.